Hi, and thank you for joining us today to learn more about climate. I'm Lucy Noble, and I've dedicated the last 11 years of my career in reducing greenhouse gas emissions by shifting users to more sustainable travel options. Now, I want to raise awareness about environmental issues and the urgent need to address climate change. I'll be talking to experts in this field and sharing key insights in bite sized pieces with you. I invite you to join me on this journey to understand and combat climate change, where each episode brings actionable insights and solutions. Today, we're talking to Marty Grady. Marty is a U.S. Peruvian dual citizen from South Florida working as a climate tech analyst for a decarbonization software startup. Since graduating from since graduating with an undergrad degree from Vanderbilt University, he has worked with a NASA climate venture incubator, Google, and several startups. Hi, Marty. How are you?
Hi, Lucy. I'm doing pretty well. How about you?
I'm well too. Thank you for being here and talking to us about climate and sustainability. Why are you interested in climate and sustainability to begin with?
Like a lot of people, I just had a casual awareness of it growing up, but once I got to university, that's where it really picked up for me. I heard about the UN Climate Change Conference. That year was in Madrid, 2019, and I wanted to go. I thought there was a great opportunity to be in the room where it happened, so to speak, and learn a lot more than I might just from a course in college. And that proved to be true. At first, I wasn't sponsored to go, so I reached out to other NGOs and universities that had passes to go in the negotiation zone. And after a couple dozen no's, I got a couple yeses and was able to negotiate with my professors, get out my finals that semester, and go learn a lot. One of the more fun stories, and there are the fun ones as well, but the one I am most fond of from that was using my knowledge of Spanish to talk to security guards and convince them to let me and the friends I'd made speak with Nancy Pelosi before she went out and talked with reporters with the U.S. delegation there. Um,
Well,
that
that's pretty
was that was a lot
cool.
of fun. Yeah,
Yeah. So you met Nancy. What did you guys talk about?
it was brief, but I just kind of expressed appreciation for the work that she was doing in the select committee on the climate crisis at the time. Um, and she appreciated that and actually introduced me to the chair of that committee who was part of her delegation. So with her, I had a longer conversation about both being from Florida and the different impacts of climate change that were affecting our state.
Very cool. Very cool. And must be so even cooler, cool that you like were able to get out of your finals, but then also very cool to meet Nancy Pelosi at the same time. That's very exciting. And how did you get into How did you get into climate as a career?
Well, that probably came from the less cool moments at COP. Um, there was there was that like meeting world famous people and experts in their field that you had just read about and heard in stories and got to see in person. But then there were also the quiet conversations I had sought out from people that I scoped out in advance that would be there that I knew had something to warn, not just to inspire with. And those conversations they left me pretty shaken. So I just realized that this was a problem that I could solve for the rest of my career working towards it, the climate problem generally, and resolved to find areas that hadn't yet been figured out fully where someone early in my career, like I was at that time and still am, could have an outsized impact. So that's how I started to think about climate tech and all the different ways that decarbonization technologies that exist today can start to get to scale and how I can be a part of that.
Really cool. And I think COP is a really great opportunity for a lot of people to learn about climate and what people are doing around the world to come together to solve it as a collective. And so, from your perspective, what is the most urgent thing that we need to work on?
Yeah, I think um, being at Google for a while, around the same time that you were there too, that gave me some good perspective. I was there building my skills for a few years and just trying to stay in my lane day to day, just learn, but also see what was going on in sustainability and where I was noticing disconnects. And I think that there's there's a Silicon Valley way of doing things and a mantra and an optimism that um, doesn't connect with the way I grew up and being between like Peru and South Florida that there's there's just so many different places that people and organizations are at in their climate journeys. Many haven't even started, and many are kind of towards the finish line, claiming themselves to be experts and asking people to follow them. So there's a whole spectrum between, and I think the most important and urgent thing that we can do is meeting people where they are, even ourselves, and just being very empathetic but also honest. And the organizations that we're a part of as well, aligning on specific problems that we think aren't solved, but have solutions out there somewhere that just need some digging. And finding people to be curious together with, finding high quality data that you can use to back up your thoughts and your maneuverings, explorations, and moving from those discussions to iterating and acting as soon as possible. So just being empathetic with one another wherever you are in your climate journey, or wherever your organization is, if you're parts of one that want to make a difference, and figuring out what you can start on right now.
Yeah, that's definitely the way to go, is to just, be able to have conversations, bipartisan conversations with each other, without, political agendas, and just, talk about what's going on with Earth and the climate, and what we can do as a collective to be able to improve that. And tell us about your work. Where are you working, and how are you using your opportunity there to make incremental change and talk to people, and collectively make this a better world?
Yeah, thank you. That's a good call out about work. So I'm here representing my own perspective. I'm happy to talk about Teralytic. They're great, and I'm really grateful to be with them. Um, from like I have an overall view of like we all need to be doing as much as we can in wherever domain we are. And so the way I chose to do that for now is from a business supply chain point of view, working with Teralytic and the amazing team that we have to not just get to a report and feel great at the end of the year, like, oh, here's how much we emitted. Um, that's like I heard this once from my manager, like that's like going on a scale and seeing how much you weigh, but not knowing whether that's good or bad. And there's just the number, but there's no context there. There's no understanding of where it comes from and what can be done to get to wherever it is that your health goal is. So that's what Teralytic is doing. That's what I'm proud to be part of. Understanding all the complexity that goes into supply chains, not just having an overall benchmark number, but really knowing, okay, if you change this part of your niche supply chain process, here's where the costs are going to be, here's where the emission savings can be. Long term, you can expect to make more money or reduce your risk in this way. And finding ways to integrate AI into that is also something that we're thinking about. So yeah, that's a bit about work.
Great. And also, so you mentioned, the most urgent thing is to kind of aligning the problem and getting people to talk together and look at the data, and the quality of the data is really important. How should people be looking at that? A regular day-to-day person, or you're thinking about someone who's doing this as a career as a data analyst?
I think from the everyday perspective, there's so much more that we can do than we might realize at any given time. Like we all live in communities, hopefully, where there's decent housing, and um, it takes energy to keep the lights on. That energy is probably provided by a local utility that uses some mix of fossil fuels and renewables to generate the energy that we use. The businesses that we go to for work also rely on that. Though the business that we work for might be using data centers to keep all our stored information in the cloud somewhere, or it might be mixing a bunch of chemicals in a very structured and safe way to produce consumer goods that get sold to the public. There's um, there's just so much that underlies everyday life that we just don't question usually because it works, and that's good. It's preferable that way. But one of the things I think we can do is to start asking questions like, oh, how did we align on getting this supplier? Um, what are we doing in this local utility example to increase the share of renewables in my energy mix? So if I get an electric vehicle, maybe one day it's not completely powered by coal like some places in the country still might have, or even our local governments. That is where there's a huge opportunity for impact. If you speak to your congressman, they probably have 1,000 people trying to get in their ear. But if you go to your local mayor's office or your city commissioner and show up to one of those meetings that most people ignore when they put the signs on the roadways like, hey, there's a public hearing in this day at this time. If they get even 5 people that speak a concern, if you can grab a couple friends or family members that all have similar questions, and you're a public person that's used to getting next to no feedback on this random area of your work, then you can start asking questions. Then you can go up to your leadership and say, I've got this mandate from the public to look into this a little more. And that's where change can start. Individual action is important, but I think it's also a little bit overstated. Like over the past couple of decades, I know there's been some information campaigns by various companies and governments to try and put the onus on your carbon footprint. Why are you consuming so much per year in carbon in your carbon footprint? But there's a huge opportunity for systems level thinking, even for the average consumer or employee, to start asking, why are we doing things this way, and starting there, making changes more than just cutting out meat if that's what you choose to do, or flying less if that's what you choose to do. Starting to think about how you can accelerate that impact with just a couple more voices behind you to lend credence to these efforts.
Yeah, I think that's such a great idea. And actually, like a lot of smaller cities, off their city manager or mayor may offer office hours, in addition to like the big forums where we're welcome to come and speak your opinions and stuff like that. And that might be kind of daunting for some individuals, or the timing doesn't work out because it's usually late at night. But sometimes the office hours really help, and actually, or sometimes the city might have a website where you can just submit a request or inquiry. And I've done that in the past. I actually did one today, and the city responded to me immediately about a situation. And it wasn't an urgent matter, but sometimes they're just opening up that communication, and it might be easier than you think. And so I definitely
Absolutely.
agree. Talk to your city, talk to your representatives. And of course, there's an opportunity to vote coming soon. So of course, that's also really important. I do promote that people kind of get out there and understand what we're able to vote on. And of course, definitely do vote.
100%.
So yeah, so any advice or call to action to our listeners who are here today? What would you tell them to do if there was a thing that they would go take away from this discussion?
I would say two things. Maybe all this can probably be done in 30 minutes to an hour, but make a list of every association you're a part of. Not a formal one necessarily. I mean, we are part of workplaces, many of us, and I don't know, in the U.S. perspective, I think we have the concept of homeowners associations for those of us who live in suburbs or rural areas like that. But not just the formal ones. Like, what groups do you frequent? Where do you spend your money? Like, what small businesses do you support? What powers their businesses, and what does your government locally do to support you? Everything from the gas guzzling school bus that takes local children to school to a postal carrier. What services are offered for like plugging a road? Where do the materials that come from to create the cement infrastructure that we use? There's just so much that we don't think about, because that's what good infrastructure is supposed to do. It's supposed to be out of sight, out of mind. But just starting to make a list of, here are all the things that I usually do that I just don't really think about, except for right now. And that could be a good place to start with who you can ask questions about and how to make things better. But more than that, I think, especially going back to what I talked about earlier, meeting people where they are. I think a lot of times in the U.S. it's talked about politically. Like, there's some people who still don't see the data the same way with you and I might about the existence of human-caused climate change today. So I've found that it's best to focus not the conversation on whether or not this exists, but kind of like in a healthy relationship. It's not supposed to be one versus the other. It's like both against a problem. And so the U.S. government late last year released a report called NCA5, the Fifth National Climate Assessment. And that's one I'm trying to recommend to a lot of other people, especially around my age in their 20s, to get familiar with, because this is the world we might be going to. Public servants and scientists took a lot of time and care to present very localized impacts of what climate change might bring over the next 30 years and beyond, under various scenarios of overall warming. Like the classic ones, like 1.5 and 2 degrees centigrade, but there's also 3 and even worse, possibly. So everything from sea level rise to how much more snow you might get in the wintertime, extreme precipitation, where plants won't be able to grow anymore that used to be able to grow in certain places. All of these are things that exist right now that you can look in under 30 minutes and get a very good, reasonable, and up-to-date understanding of the most probable impacts that climate change is going to have in your community. And so when you're talking with someone that in a way that might need a bit of recentering around what the problem is that both of us should be on the same team for, that's what you can use. You say, like, look, we might disagree on these couple things, but at the end of the day, like, the best available science we have is saying X, Y, Z is coming for us and for our kids and for our loved ones if we don't do anything. So here's what I think we can do, and that's a great research thing that can help center later conversations.
Thank you for that. And I cannot agree more. I think what you said hit it right in the nail was, it's not us against you or you against me. It's us, both of us against this problem, right? How can we both work together to solve this issue? And I cannot agree more. And I think that leads us to, more conversations, more discussions and brainstorming, and of course, looking at the data in different perspectives too. And maybe that's a way to go, and not argue about, the actual data, but like using it as a tool to help us move forward. So really appreciate that, Marty. Any last words, takeaways, or, for our audience?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me on LinkedIn if you want to ask further questions. That's I think the URL is linkedin.com/Martin Grady Jr. Marty's my nickname. And if you want to learn more about the work that I do, happy to connect there, or reach out through our website at teralytic.com if you think your business has questions about your supply chain, getting beyond just a report every year about here's what we have emitted in the past year, but really thinking about how we can get the various materials that power everyday lives and businesses and health, and making them more sustainable, because we have that choice.
Great. Thank you, Marty. Thanks for sharing that. And I will definitely add your LinkedIn to the video so that people can find you there.
Thanks so much, Lucy. I really appreciated the conversation.
Thank you for joining us today, Marty. And to our audience, if there's a particular topic related to climate change that you're passionate or curious about, please let us know. Leave a comment below, because your input helps shape our future episodes and ensures we're covering the issues that matter most to you. Don't forget to subscribe and join us next week for more insightful discussions. Together, let's explore solutions and take action for a healthier planet.